Out. No, it's not. It's the Daily Freak Out for Monday, the 1st of August. And I feel like the intro music wasn't at its best, if I'm being honest. I like that effect, but I probably won't use it again anytime soon. It was good for the headlines, but not for the main show. And you may, I was going to say, you may notice a difference here. It might sound a little bit different, but it probably doesn't because not that many people are watching this. And so, or listening to this. And so you probably won't notice a difference because you probably won't have listened to this before. I feel like there's this strange reverby, echoey thing. And anyway, some new technology has been purchased for the studio and it's sounding a bit different and things are going a little bit different. And so my brain is noticing those things. And from a producer standpoint, I'm like, oh, this is not good and we want to change it and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to carry on, carrying on. And I've just noticed that the battery charge on one of the devices has lowered increasingly just as I've turned things on. So this might be an incredibly short episode, which is great and not great all at the same time. There's an argument in the world that says you've just got to do it. It might not be great the first time, but you do it. And then eventually it gets better and better and better. And so that's the attitude I'm taking today, in that this isn't perfect. This isn't exactly what I want. So we're going to keep just doing it and getting it done and hoping that one day it will improve and it will get better, etc., etc. So it's Monday, the 1st of August, 1st of September. I hope you're all doing well out there. Anyone who's listening to this on any of the different places that I've put this on the internet, and I hope that your Monday is going well and that you've got some good stuff on this week. I hope your weekend was good. Hope you possibly didn't go to a certain march. We'll talk about that later on. But we're going to talk about a few things. We haven't got a music recommendation today, so it's a bit disappointing. It's going to be just me talking. But again, we don't have everything perfect, and we just keep moving. So much so that the garbage truck is going past the house at the moment, and so the dogs are going to bark a little bit. And that's going to be incredibly, incredibly professional. So let's talk about the first thing that I want to talk about today. Oh, that's the wrong button. I pressed the wrong button. If you're watching the video version of this, you'll see things, and if you're listening, you won't hear anything or see any changes, but I might reference them. So I pressed the wrong button. That's the title screen. But here's the first news article that I want to talk about. It is alleged gunman Desi Freeman remains at large after police killing. This guy shot 2 cops not that long ago, 7 days I think it was now, and shot 3 cops, I should say, 2 cops and 1 thing. And I've seen the thing that sort of not disturbs as such, but interests me about this story mostly is that he's probably absolutely loving it right now. He is on the run from the terrible police that are coming to take him away, that kind of stuff. And he's using all the supplies and the skills that he has put together over the thing, and he's doing it. And for him, he's in a righteous, I am doing what I should be doing, kind of standing up to the man kind of thing. He is a freedom fighter right now. And I obviously don't, well, not obviously, but I don't agree with him. I don't think that what he's doing is the right thing to do. But from his perspective, as I said, he's a freedom fighter. He's watched all these movies and TV shows about how you stand up to the evil empire and all that kind of stuff. And I agree with standing up to the evil empire. But in his mind, he is doing exactly that. He is saying, this is what I have to do and this is what should be done and all that kind of stuff. And a number of people online I've seen have commented saying exactly that. Good on him, modern day Ned Kelly and all that kind of stuff. But you take the official story from the police perspective that we've been told, and 10 police officers arrived at his property to issue a search warrant in relation to child sex abuse. Now, again, I'm going to be a commentator of these things in terms of I just talk shit. I haven't done the full research, as some people might say. I'm not the authority on any of this stuff. So, if I'm wrong, please comment. Please tell me. The goal that I want to do in life is to always be learning, always know more. And so I want to know more about these things. But as far as I'm aware, one story is that this guy is a nutjob sovereign citizen who thinks that by using pseudo intellectual big law words, he can do strange things. There's footage of him claiming that he's arresting a judge whilst in court. Apparently, a lot of sovereign citizens believe that they can use certain old-time law wordings and certain even American systems and stuff in Australia. There's footage of him apparently going onto other people's property and saying, "No, I'm in the right here," and blah 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 blah. And it does bring up for me questions that always happen with these disputes and things that happen in life in terms of what I'm allowed to do on my property and what land is public land and stuff like that. For instance, there is a park near me that, as far as I'm aware, was an old tip that just got covered over and allowed to go to nature, and is very slowly being turned into a much nicer park. Now, it's turned into a dog park because there's no facilities or anything there, so a bunch of people just go and do their thing on the dog park. But a couple of the properties, or about 3 of the properties that back onto this nature area, have pushed their property in a way a little bit further out. For instance, one place has actually put down a ground scoria or rock gravel type section. Another place has put trees and branches to sort of make a pseudo fence, effectively giving them either a barrier to the nature area or more land, effectively. And the argument from my perspective is you can't do that. But then there's a certain argument of, well, what does it matter? And it's this weird thing of where's that line of stuff. And I think in almost all aspects of our lives, we push those boundaries, quite literally in this case, but figuratively in other cases of, well, this is public land, I'm allowed to be here, I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do that. I like to go to this same park and make a very small contained little fire and pretend that I'm camping. A lot of people would be like, oh, you can't light fires in a public park and stuff. And it's like, well, I kind of agree you can't. Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I'm not really hurting anyone. My goal is always to be completely unobtrusive to other people, and for people to not even know I'm there, so that I don't affect anyone. I'm always keeping a very controlled fire and stuff. But where do you draw that line? Can someone like this Desi guy do whatever he wants, go hunting, go do this, go do that on other people's property? And where is the restriction to stop people from doing stuff? For instance, a lot of these sovereign citizen people think that they don't need a driver's license because they don't recognize the government as being lawful or something. And so they say, I'm not driving, I'm traveling. You can't, that's a technicality, you can't get beyond that. And it's like, well, no, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think the government are just going to allow you to travel? Because if that's the case, it would happen, and then everyone would do it because nobody wants to have to pay. Or if if anybody could get away with not paying for a driver's license, they wouldn't do it. No one's like, oh, I definitely want to have a driver's license and pay for it. Everyone wants to save that money. So where do you think you're going to get away with it when no one has in the past? That's the thing with the sovereign citizen movement that really confuses me, is I don't understand where they have examples of this kind of thinking being successful. For instance, this Desi guy, where is the success? Now, he thinks, as I'm assuming, that he's a freedom fighter. He's fighting the oppressive regime. Just like if you were in a war zone, if you're in Ukraine or if you're in Gaza, for instance, and people are dropping bombs and attacking, and you've got the settlers pushing their way in, and you've got the invading Russian forces pushing their way in, you're going to be a resistance force. Let's go back to World War II, the French resistance. People who lived in German-occupied France and fought against this government. They were freedom fighters. And obviously history is written... Oh, pardon me. History is written by the victor. So we write our history about what happened in France as they were resistance fighters. But if you look at it from a slightly different perspective, they were anti-government terrorists. Are the IRA terrorists or are they freedom fighters? Now, very clearly, I do not think that this Desi guy and any other sovereign citizen is a freedom fighter. I think that here in Australia we have a lot of really good freedoms. And I think that, unfortunately, living in any kind of society, you need to be able to compromise. You need to be able to say, hey, you know what? Maybe setting off fireworks and having big bonfires during drought is not good for the community, and I'm not going to do that, because even though I should be allowed to do anything I want, that's not good. Driving on the left-hand side of the road, or right, depending on where you live, is good for all of us. That is a law, and it is a law that makes complete sense. Let's go for it. There is that compromise. Now, I've said before on different places and stuff that I am ultimately somewhat of an anarchist in terms of thinking. I don't want a king, I don't want a president, I don't want even a prime minister to a certain degree. But I do believe that community is a positive thing and that we should all agree on certain things. And this Desi guy and all these other sovereign citizens think that certain other things are true, and certain that they can say, no, I stop it here. And apparently with the sovereign citizen movement, COVID was a big thing because they had lockdowns and things where people were like, you can't go do this, you can't go do that. And for instance, I still am gardener, but I was a gardener during COVID, and I wasn't allowed to go and do garden maintenance on properties that I had done. And this was somewhat absurd because A, I work by myself in that situation. B, I would have been perfectly happy to wear a mask when I went there. C, I could stand 10 feet from someone and say, what do you want me to do in your garden? They could say, do this, and I'd say, no problem, and I could go about it without going anywhere near them. Again, I could go nowhere near them and wear a mask. So it was very possible and plausible that I could do that kind of stuff, that work, without it being a problem. Yet, I wasn't allowed to do that. And I understand, like, you've got certain, you've got payments you need, all that kind of stuff. It's a problematic situation because you're like, well, I've got to work, I've got to earn money. My whole life is based on, or my finances of my life are based on this income coming in. But I said to myself, well, look at the world. We've got this crazy situation and we don't really know what to do because we've only ever just thought about what to do. We've spitballed ideas. So we just need to have a bit of understanding and flexibility here and work our best situation as best we can. Whereas the sovereign citizen movement got their knickers in a twist and said, "You can't tell me what to do. I'm never listening to you, blah, blah, blah." And they just kicked up a real big fuss and said, "No, you can never do it. Never, never, never. You can't tell me to stay home and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to go out. I'm not going to get a mandatory vaccine," and all that kind of stuff. And there's that, for me, it came down to that compromise between we should have autonomy over our bodies, for sure. But we have to remember we live in a society. We cannot avoid the fact that we have other humans around us and we affect them. Our actions affect other humans around us. And so not taking the vaccine and then turning up at a hospital when you're sick and dying and causing issues in all that regard, like so many people did during COVID, was irresponsible in terms of your responsibility to the community. And if you don't want to be part of the community, then piss off. These kind of people, like, for instance, apparently, and this is rumors and things that I've seen online, I cannot officially verify this just at the moment. This Desi guy and certain other sovereign citizens, they say the government's illegitimate and they don't want the government and all that kind of stuff, yet they take the dole or Centrelink or whatever you want to call it, but they take government money and government subsidies and all that kind of stuff for their life. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways. For instance, again, anarchy to a certain level, but paying taxes for the community and then the community paying people who are struggling, to me, is a positive thing. If we lived in a village, I often, when I think about these things, think of like a Viking village with a big town hall building in the middle and then houses around it, then a fence around it, that kind of thing. And I think to myself, you know what? If the farmer farms a bunch of stuff and gives it to the community, he or she should then get a little bit of the security and should get a bit of the plumbing or the candles or the fire or whatever that. And so you contribute what you can to the society, and then the society gives you some back from everyone else's. And that, to me, makes a lot of sense. We work together. And if you work and contribute to the society, to the community, you should get something back. And I guess that's where the anarchy comes in of, I don't want a king and a ruler who does nothing and just says, do this, do that. I like it when I'm in a workplace and the manager/owner is also there working with you. Obviously, in that situation, the owner and the manager has to also do stuff that doesn't look like work, i.e. brainstorming new ideas and all that kind of stuff. But if we all contribute and put in, we benefit. And that also comes with compromise. And that means taking a vaccine, or it means having a driver's license. And it doesn't mean going to court and saying that I arrest the judge because I find the judge to be illegitimate based on some maritime law that I found somewhere in some book. Anyway, the story of Desi is going to continue on. People are referring to him as a modern day Ned Kelly, and I don't think we should think of Ned Kelly as such a hero, to be honest. I find that very interesting. Again, history has a way of turning these things around, and what happens at the time might not be something else. And it does seem, I very much want to live in the country where I am left alone and I am not near people and I can do whatever I want, kind of thing, and just feel more relaxed. But the long arm of the law will always come for you no matter what. So there are certain things you can't do. But anyway, let's move on to another interesting talking topic. This man has spoken to the Kremlin. He says Putin wants to keep war going. Of course he does. Putin invaded. This is the thing that really somewhat confuses me when we hear about peace talks and everything in regards to especially Ukraine, or Gaza's the other one. The one side, it might be a war as such, but one side is clearly an invading force. As much as you might, I've seen certain people and stuff suggest or talking about that aid is going to Gaza. The Israelis are not blocking aid and stuff like that, or creating a famine. And it's like, yeah, but they are invading. Like, they are pushing their borders out and taking over other places. They also, now, this is something that I've been meaning to research and just haven't got round to. As far as I'm aware, at the end of World War II, the Israeli people, or the Jewish people who became the Israeli people, were given a block of land or a bit of land to live on. And since then, they've been pushing their borders and trying to expand and say, this is ours, we deserve this. And then when they've come up against resistance from the Palestinians in particular, they've said, you're wrong, we're the right ones, and they've taken to force. They've used force, which then, quite understandably, would create resistance fighters who would try to say, you can't take that, we're going to fight to stop you. For instance, if I happen to own my land, I currently rent, so I'm not as concerned, but if I owned my property, I'd say, well, wait a second, I put the effort in and owned this. According to all of the documents and all the laws of the land, I put the effort in to own this. Why should I allow you to just come in and take it? I'm going to fight. And it makes sense to me that the Ukrainians are fighting, the Gazians are fighting, and they are saying, please stop it. Do not come in here. You cannot come in here. This is our land. We live here. Do not fight. So Putin, of course, doesn't want to just say, that's it, we'll stop now. Because Putin has said, we want that land. We're going to take that land. And it's why Donald Trump's talk about taking Greenland, or Canada even, is incredibly worrying, because it seems that so many people around the world throughout all of time, let's not forget that this is a human trait, this whole expansion of people and land. The reason I am sitting where I'm sitting, living the life I'm living, is because the English said, let's go take that land. They said, we found this island, massive continent, there's only Aboriginal native people there, let's just take it and expand and be a cancer on the land. We are humans, white folk in particular, but all of us here, I was going to talk about it, but we're running out of time. The recent anti-immigration protests, we're all immigrants. My grandparents emigrated here. My grandparents at the end of World War II moved here from England. I might be incredibly white and incredibly English, like a lot of those people. I could easily pass for someone in the protests against immigration, but I am still descendants of immigrants, and I have benefited from that immigration. I really enjoy a lot of food and cultures and music and everything and people from other places. Immigration benefits me and my life in so many ways. And that is a human trait. That is a human thing that we do. We spread out. The English, the French, everybody else that went to the Americas and said, hey, we're gonna stay here. We're gonna live here now. So you could almost say that from a native population's perspective, these anti-immigration people are right. You could have had, at this anti-immigration protest, Aboriginal people protesting, saying, you know what, you're right. Get rid of this immigration stuff, or you white folk piss off back to England. That's an argument, isn't it? But again, certain members of us benefit from that, and we're here, and we're probably not going anywhere, because look at all the things we've built and the strength of that. You look at then Genghis Khan back in the day, going across the Eurasia steppe and saying, we're going to expand, we're going to take over, this is our land, here we go. And the benefits and negatives of that so many people died. But then so many positive things happened. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But this is the interesting thing of immigration. Is it good? Is it bad? That kind of thing. Again, I fall with, like I do with so many things, right into the middle where I say some immigration or a certain level of immigration is fantastic. But you can't just say free for all. But then you can argue, if you look at America, when America was being founded, there was a pretty open immigration policy at one point where they said, everybody from Europe, come on over. And they all found places and cities to settle. That's why so many American cities have such a strong heritage towards one particular thing. Boston being Irish. New York, I think, is very Italian, but then there's also Russian Jewish sections of New York, and etc. New Orleans being French. North America, or further north into Quebec being very French. All that kind of stuff. And there's a positive to that. But then there's also the thing of, if you've got like way too many people in an area, there's not enough food. There's not enough housing, perhaps. Some people say that the immigration policies of this country are the cause of the the housing crisis we have at the moment. I would argue that it's the landlords and the billionaires and stuff like that. So maybe it's not a cut and dry discussion. Maybe it's not a cut and dry answer. Maybe we need to try multiple different things in order to get situations happening so that we have a nuanced argument and a nuanced decision and a nuanced solution. I don't necessarily think protesting is going to do that. I don't think necessarily being completely racist and being just anti-immigration is going to do that. Especially because so many of these anti-immigration people don't care that someone like myself is a descendant of immigrants. They just think that black people and brown people are the problem. So it's a big topic. It's something that I probably don't have enough knowledge to ramble on about in my version of podcasting. But there we go. Comment anywhere you're listening to this. Comment, send me an email, get in touch. DMs are always open because I'm not that popular. And I want to know, what are your thoughts? Help me better understand the world whilst we all better understand the world, and we can talk about these things and find out what's going on. Anyway, this has been the Daily Freakout for Monday, the 1st of August, using new technology, experimenting, getting to almost 30 minutes. Wow, what a ramble this has been. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, like, subscribe, comment, review, all that kind of stuff. Feedback is very wanted and very needed, and will only improve the show. But for now, I say, have a good Monday. Go have a coffee, have some breakfast, and enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Woo!